There is a moment, somewhere between your 59th and 60th year, when the world begins to look different. Not darker, not smaller, different, like you have finally climbed high enough on the mountain to see both where you have been and where you are still going. The air is cleaner up here, the noise below fades, and if you are very still, very honest with yourself, you begin to notice something you could not see before. You begin to notice who belongs in that high, clean air with you, and who does not. I want to speak to you today about something the elders in my tradition have always known, something that women, in particular, carry quietly in their chests for decades before they finally allow themselves to say it out loud. After 60 years of living, your time is sacred, your peace is sacred, and there are certain kinds of people, certain patterns of relationship that will reach into you and take what is sacred without ever asking permission. This is not about bitterness. This is not about building walls. The old ones never taught us to close our hearts. What they taught us was discernment. There is a difference between an open heart and an unguarded one. A river does not stop flowing because it has banks. The banks are what give it direction, what give it power. So today, I want to tell you about 5 types of people that the wisdom of the elders, the wisdom carried down through generations of women who lived close to the earth and close to the truth, suggests you protect yourself from after 60, not with anger, not with judgment, but with the quiet, unshakable authority of a woman who finally knows what she is worth. Are you ready? Because the first one may surprise you. The first type of person you must learn to recognize is the one I call the eternal drain. In the old villages, there was a teaching about certain fires. Most fires, you tend them. You feed them wood. They give you warmth in return. But there are fires that consume everything you put into them and give back only smoke. The elders would say, do not build your home around a fire that only takes. The eternal drain is someone, often someone you have known for years, perhaps even someone you love deeply, who comes to you only in need. Every conversation circles back to their suffering, their problems, their grievances. When you share something from your own life, something tender, something joyful, they nod briefly and then return to themselves. You leave every interaction with them feeling hollowed out, tired in a way that sleep does not fix. There was a woman in a Lakota community, an elder named Quiet Water, who was known for her generosity. For 40 years she gave. She gave counsel, she gave time, she gave the food from her own table. And there was a woman in her life, an old friend from childhood, who received all of it without ever truly giving back. Not out of malice, that is important to understand. The eternal drain does not always know what they are doing. They are simply oriented entirely toward their own interior world. When Quiet Water was 63, she sat with her grandmother's teaching in her mind, and she asked herself honestly, after I spend time with this person, do I feel more alive or less? The answer, when she was brave enough to hear it, was clear, and she began, slowly, gently, to create distance. Not cruelty, distance. She did not cut this woman from her life entirely, but she stopped making herself available the way she once had. She stopped offering the center of herself to someone who did not know how to receive it with care. And something remarkable happened. In the space that opened up, Quiet Water began to hear her own thoughts again. She began to feel her own feelings instead of managing someone else's. She started painting for the first time in 20 years. This is what protection looks like at 60. Not a slammed door, a gentle, dignified stepping back. The second type of person is harder to name because they often wear the face of someone who cares about you. I call them the memory thief. These are the people who insist on keeping you anchored to the person you used to be. They remind you constantly of your past mistakes, your old wounds, your younger limitations. When you share who you are becoming, they smile and say something like, "Oh, I remember when you used to say that, and then you changed your mind." Or are you sure you never really followed through on things like this before? They are not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they simply have not grown themselves, and your growth makes them uncomfortable. Sometimes they are afraid that if you change, there will be no room for them in the new life you are building. And so they pull at your ankles as you try to rise. The Cherokee have a saying that was passed to me by a woman named Beloved Mother who carried it from her own grandmother. She said, "A person who only knows your winter has no authority over your spring." 60 years of living means you have survived winters that would have broken someone younger. You have made mistakes, yes. You have fallen, yes. But you have also learned. You have also transformed. Any person who refuses to see that transformation, who insists on defining you only by who you were at your lowest or your youngest or your most lost, that person is not seeing you. They are seeing a photograph of you, old and faded, and mistaking it for the living, breathing woman you have become. You are allowed to outgrow the story someone else is still telling about you. Now, the third type of person. This one lives very close to home for many women over 60. I call them the restless critic. And what makes them particularly difficult is that sometimes they love you. Sometimes they are your own children, your siblings, old friends who believe they are helping you. The restless critic has an opinion about everything you do, how you dress, what you eat, the choices you make about your own life and your own body. They disguise their control as concern. They wrap their judgment in the language of worry. You hear things like, "I just want what is best for you," and "I am only saying this because I care." And perhaps they do care, but care that strips away your autonomy, care that treats you as incapable of making your own decisions, care that makes you feel smaller every time you encounter it. That is not care. That is something else wearing care's clothing. There is a story from the Anishinaabe tradition about an elder woman named Cedar Smoke who had raised 4 children and buried 1 husband and survived 2 hard winters that took many in her village. She was fierce and capable and wise. But her eldest son, a well-meaning man, had developed the habit of making every decision for her. He chose her doctor. He told her what to eat. He arranged her days without asking. And each time she raised her voice, he said, "Mother, I only want to protect you." Cedar Smoke finally sat him down by the water one evening, and she said to him, "You cannot protect me from my own life. I have lived longer than you. I have survived more than you can imagine. What you call protection, I call erasure, and I will not be erased. It is one of the most powerful things I have ever heard. I will not be erased. After 60, you have earned the absolute right to make your own choices about your own life. You may make choices others disagree with. That is your sacred right. Anyone who consistently treats your preferences as problems to be managed is someone whose presence, at least in the volume they currently occupy in your life, needs to be reconsidered. The fourth type of person is perhaps the most subtle, and they appear most often during the transitions of later life, times of loss, of change, of vulnerability. I call them the false comforter. They come close when you are grieving or uncertain. They speak softly. They offer presence. But underneath their comfort is a hunger for your gratitude, for your dependence, for the feeling of being needed that they draw from your pain. You recognize the false comforter not in the moment of comfort itself, but in what comes after, because the false comforter subtly discourages your healing. They grow quieter, even slightly cooler, as you grow stronger. They return most warmly when you are struggling again. They have, without ever saying it, made a home in your difficulty, and if you get well, they lose their residence. An elder from the Ojibwe Nation, a medicine woman whose name I will not speak because she asked for her stories to go unnamed, told me about a woman in her community who had lost her husband and her sister in the same year. A neighbor came every day, sat with her, held her hand, and this woman believed she had found a true friend in her grief. But as the months passed and she began to find her footing again, as she began to laugh occasionally and plan for the future and re-enter the world, this neighbor's visits became laced with something strange, reminders of the loss. "Are you sure you should be going out so much? Isn't it too soon? I worry you are not truly dealing with your grief." The woman slowly realized that her neighbor did not want her healed. Her neighbor wanted her needing. True comfort, the old ones teach us, looks like a hand that holds you until you can stand and then opens to let you walk. Any hand that refuses to open is not holding you. It is holding you back. And the fifth type of person, this one, I want you to sit with for a moment before I speak it, because it is the one that takes the most courage to recognize. The fifth type is the joyless mirror. This is a person whose presence reflects back to you a version of life that is diminished, finished, past its purpose. They are the ones who speak of aging only as decline, who treat every gray hair as a surrender, every physical change as a defeat. They speak of the years ahead with dread, and if you allow them close enough, their dread becomes your own. We live in a world that has, for a long time, taught women that their value peaks early and then diminishes. That beauty is youth. That purpose belongs to the young. And there are people who have absorbed this teaching so deeply that they cannot see beyond it. And when you come to them with your 60 years of depth and your hard-won wisdom and your capacity for joy that has only grown richer with time, they look at you with a kind of quiet pity that is more damaging than any open insult. The elders of many nations have always understood something that the modern world keeps trying to make us forget. The elder years are not the fading of a life. They are the flowering of it. The Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, gave their eldest women a place of final authority in the community, not because age had weakened them, because age had completed them. A woman of 60 or 70 years carried something no younger person could carry. Not just memory, not just experience, but a kind of deep, unshakable knowing that only comes from having fully lived. You are not fading. You are flowering. And you must surround yourself with people who can see that. I want to ask you something now, and I want you to answer it honestly. Not for me, but for yourself. When you think of the people closest to you in your life right now, how many of them leave you feeling more like yourself after time together? How many of them see you fully, the woman you are today? Not just the woman you were. How many of them make space for your joy without needing to manage it, your grief without feeding on it, your growth without being threatened by it? Those people, those are your circle. Those are the ones you tend like sacred fire. The others, you do not have to cut away with anger. The teachings were never about anger. You simply stop feeding what is not feeding you. You stop explaining yourself to those who have already decided who you are. You stop making yourself small so that others can feel large. You stop apologizing for taking up the space you have more than earned. There was an elder woman, very old, one of the oldest in her community, who was asked by a young woman what was the most important thing she'd learned in all her years. And she was quiet for a long time. She looked out at the water, at the light moving on its surface, at the geese moving overhead in their patient, purposeful formation. And then she said, "I learned who I was by learning what I would no longer carry." That is the teaching for today. That is what I want to leave with you. You have carried so much. You have carried other people's pain and other people's needs and other people's visions of who you should be. You have carried it across decades, across losses, across the long, beautiful, difficult journey that has brought you to exactly this moment. You have earned the right to set some of it down. Protecting your peace at 60 is not selfishness. It is the deepest form of wisdom. Because a woman who is at peace, who is whole, who is surrounded by people who genuinely see her, that woman is a gift to everyone around her. Her steadiness is a shelter. Her joy is a teaching. Her presence alone is medicine. So be discerning. Be gentle. Yes, but be discerning. Let your circle be small if it must, and let it be true. Let your days be filled with what fills you. Let yourself be seen by those who have eyes for who you truly are. The mountain is beautiful up here. The air is clean. There is room for the people who are willing to make the climb. You have always been worth the climb.